Today we're looking at React Query, or how it's now called TanStack Query, which is a popular asynchronous state management for React. And so I thought we can take a look how we can use it together with Supabase. Now, I actually got inspired by my friend Giancarlo, who's the creator of MakerKit, and he's written a blog post on how to use React Query with Supabase, and he's using the Remix framework here. But I know a lot of you are using Next.js, so I thought let's try and use it within the new Next.js. So let's go from scratch. Let's use create next app. Create a new next app. We'll just call it Super React Query. And then, yes, we do want TypeScript. We do want ESLint. Yeah, sure, let's use Tailwind. No, yeah, let's just use all the defaults here. Great, so now we can go into our Super React Query, and I like to use VS Code. So let's open this up here. So we can see now we have our app directory, we have our page in here. So now we can say npm run dev, just kind of spin this up, and let's have a quick look at it. So here is our local host. Let's pin that here. And so now if we're looking at the blog post, we'll need to install a couple libraries. We need supabase-js, React Query, and then Supabase SSR. So Supabase SSR allows us to use Supabase in a server-side rendering context. So if we're using Next.js, especially now with the new server components and all that new stuff, the SSR library is really helpful in allowing us to use client-side, server-side, kind of all the sides basically. Okay, great. So now we have that installed. And so, as you can see, kind of creating a React Query client. So in the root component of our app, we need to kind of add this query client provider. So now in Remix, there's kind of an outlet here. So there's a note if you're using Next.js, this will be in the here app_app tsx. Now we're using the new app router here. So we have the layout component, which is now kind of the global sort of root layout. But however, if we were to try and do this here, so we can have, just for fun, let's have a look. We can import this from, React Query. There we go. So this is our query client coming in from React Query. And then now if we were to get the query client provider and just wrap, this is our root here. And then we were to wrap this, and we get this from here, the query client provider. So, first of all, this looks like there's no errors or anything, but now if we're running this and we're going back to our local host and refresh this, we will now see an error here, plain objects, client components from server components. So there's an issue here where, we can't use kind of this query client provider in a server. So currently this is server rendered. So we actually need to pull this out into a client component. So let's create a new file. Let's just say components, and then let's say React Query client provider dot tsx. And let's stop this for a second. And so now what we can do is we can basically do kind of this here. but we'll just export it. So we'll say export const react query client provider, and that's a function that takes in children, and the children are of type react.react node. Yep. And then basically you will just say, actually I think we can just return this. So we'll return the query client. Yeah, we just need to import this one as well. Query client provider. And then these are our children. And then, no. Okay, there we are. So now we have our React Query provider. And so the important thing here, we'll need to say use client, to tell Next.js that this is a client component. And so now in our layout, we can go and say, instead of importing this, we'll be importing the React Query client provider. So we don't need this anymore. And we'll just say, so we'll wrap this into our React Query client provider here. And we'll just get that in from, from our components. Okay, give that a save. And so now, if we're going back to our page, refresh this. So now we see we're not getting any errors anymore because this is now properly a client component. Okay, let's go further in the tutorial. So here, he's creating a hook to create a supabase client. So we can do this as well. Maybe we'll just say a new file. We'll call it, maybe we'll just call it hooks. And then use supabase maybe. I think, okay, so he calls it get supabase browser client. So actually the hook is down here. Now, the use memo, so kind of the reason he wraps that is to prevent the client from being recreated on every render. Actually, it should be fine. Like the client creation isn't too expensive, and it uses kind of the same storage mechanism in the background. So actually, it should be fine. But maybe let's just then say new file. So we'll just say utils /supabase.js, and then this is kind of where we create our browser client. So from supabase SSR, we'll remove this. It's probably useful. And then yes, the database. So we can import all the database types into our client. Now we don't actually need kind of the return type here. There's a supabase client that is you can export from supabase-js. There's the supabase client type. And so we can actually say supabase client with database. And we don't actually need this getEnv because we'll get the environment variable. So we can just, in Next.js, I think this is kind of the remix. things, we can just create a .env.local file. And here we can then import our Supabase variables. But let's first kind of follow this up. We actually also, we could check this here, but the library actually, the create browser client checks this itself, and then we can say process.env.supabase and then process.env.supabase anon key. Just need to mark them as provided. Okay, and then we return the client. Now, let's create our database types. So what we can do is we can link our project to a Supabase project. So I just have a simple Supabase project here, countries and cities. So let's go to our settings, API, and then we can copy this. So our Supabase URL. And then our Supabase anon key. So this is our Supabase URL, and this is our anon key. There we are. Okay, let's save them here. And so what we can now do, this is our project identifier. You can see this here as well. Or if you go to general, it will tell you here the reference ID as well. So what we can say is Supabase init. So first we'll initialize a Supabase folder here, and then we can say Supabase link, and we put in the project reference here. We will need our database password to kind of pull down all the schema from the database. So ideally, when you create your project, use some password manager. And you now we're all linked up. And so what we can now do is Supabase gen types TypeScript. So we're generating types for TypeScript. We're saying we want to go from the linked, and we only want the public schema. Okay, and then we want to write this to our utils / we'll call it database.types.ts. And so now we can see we have our database types in here. So for our countries and cities in there. And so now what we can do is we can get our types from @utils / database types.ts. Okay, so now we can see that our client has our all our types in there, our database types. So create browser client now has our cities and countries and kind of all that. Yep, and then we'll just need to hook this up here where we say this is in utils and then Supabase get browser Supabase client. Actually here, where was this? I think, yeah, we don't need the .ts. Okay, great. And so that is all hooked up now. Okay, and then we'll be able to use our use Supabase hook. And so now let's create a hook to fetch data. So we'll just say hooks, use organization query. So in our case, we're not creating an organization. We just have create a new file here. We're already in the hooks. And then we'll just say use country query. And so we can copy this over now. and we'll just need to get our use supabase, yep, and then get organization by ID. So you can see here that basically the queries themselves, are just kind of the pure queries, and then these are basically the way he organizes this is in a separate queries folder. He kind of has all sort of the queries. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way to create this. So in our case, is like get maybe country by ID. Yeah, so in new queries folder, get country by ID. And so what we can do is, this is like export function, get, we'll just say country by ID. Now our client here is our supabase client. So we'll import, yeah, I think, how did he type the client? Yeah, okay. So return type of, yep. So we'll just say import yeah, maybe in use supabase, where do we actually get browser client here? So maybe we can also export the type, export type my maybe typed supabase client, and so basically we'll say type supabase client is this, and then we can say typed supabase client here, and then we can just import the typed supabase client in our queries here. So we'll just say type supabase client. We can import this from the utils, and then oh yeah, in our case, I guess. Okay, so actually type supabase client is not allowed to be undefined. So we'll say type supabase client, or this one here is okay. And then so here the client is our typed, and then we say country ID is a number, and so we can now say client from, and that's a cool thing here now. As we write our queries, we get the code completion because we have the typed supabase client. So we say countries, we want the ID and the name, where the ID equals the country ID, and then yeah, we just want a single result. And so basically this is just defining the query itself. And so now we can use this query. So this would be the get country. I can't type get country by ID. And then we'll just say, yeah, maybe we'll just find anywhere where there's organization, and replace that with, well, now uppercase country. So we'll replace that one. No, that was wrong. Yeah. Yep. No. Okay, and now lowercase country. Yeah, I know there's probably a better way of doing this. And then use query here is coming from React query. So that is using our query. And then our query key is basically here kind of put together by, we're saying basically countries and the country ID. So this is kind of used for the caching and kind of the revalidating, things like that. You need to specify the query key. Yeah. And so now we should be able to kind of use this. Okay, and so now we'll create a new page and then kind of use the query in that page. So in our app, let's create a new file. So we'll want countries, then by the country ID, and then we'll have our page.tsx. So we can look at kind of the page here. We'll just export default function. So in our page, we'll export default function. We'll call it country page. And then so in our case, we'll have the params. And the params have an ID. That's a number like this. And then we have the use. So in our case, we now use country query. That's the one. And we need to provide the country ID, which is just the params.id. And then we have is loading, and then data. And then we'll have country .id or name. Yeah. Well, I guess here we can say either if is error or no country. But you can see like the typing is kind of nicely coming through here. And then we can say country.name. Okay. And so now if we see, and I think we probably need to again mark this as client. So if we were to say countries 1, I think, yeah, we'll get an error is not a function. So I think this, do we just say use client here? Let's see. And I think, did we maybe have to restart after we created the, yeah, .env.local is now applied. I think we have our keys in there. And so now, no, remind me, because this is a client component, it needs to be next public. Yes. Now need to remember my my conventions. Next public. Okay, so that should be it now. Is that correct? And so now we're loading. And we're getting an error. Yes, of course, because I actually turned on row level security policies for these tables. So RLS is on, but we don't have any policies. So let's quickly create a read access for everyone. Yep, that's it. So policy for select using true. So we'll use this template, review, save policy. And so now if we go back, give that a refresh. So we now see we're loading and then United Kingdom. And you can see here now, because this is a client component, the actual fetching of the data is performed client side. Now there is some documentation available how to do server-side rendering with React Query, specifically with like Next.js app router. Now it is a somewhat bigger topic, so I'll split that out into the next video. So stay tuned for that and let me know in the comments what else you'd like to learn, and see you next time.